The word of the cross is foolishness on the one hand to those who are perishing, to the perishing ones. And on the other hand, to the being saved ones, us, the being saved ones, it is the power of God. Why? For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, the understanding or the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this age? Has not God made moronic? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? Well, I just stop and say, I don't think the evidentialists answer that question the way I do. Because if you are going to depend upon the wisdom of the world as the means of your communication, then you don't believe that God has made the wisdom of the world foolish. For since in the wisdom of God, the world by its wisdom did not come to know God. God was pleased through the foolishness of the kerygma, the message preached, to save the believing ones. God does not save his people through the utilization of the wisdom of the world. That's a fact. If you are trying to avoid, as an apologist, being called foolish by the world, stop. You don't understand what you're talking about. You don't understand what you're doing. You will be called foolish by the world. Because it's not your arguments, and it's not your wisdom, and it's not your philosophy that's going to save anybody. It is the preaching of the message. I am not saying that you should not engage these folks in meaningful dialogue, but you cannot give them the ground. You cannot pretend that there's neutral ground to stand on. For indeed, verse 22, the Jews seek after signs, the Greeks seek after wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified. To the Jews, indeed, a scandal. To the nations, the Gentiles, indeed, foolishness. But to those who are the called. And I wish most translations put the article there. It may not flow as smoothly, but there is such thing as the called. But to tois kleitois, but to those who are the called. Because especially using autois, the fact that the article is there only emphasizes this. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. What makes the difference? Our arguments, our wisdom, showing how good you are at using the arguments of the world and the wisdom of the world? No. The only thing that makes any difference here is the redeeming grace of God. That's why I've so many times people say, "Oh, I love your apologetic stuff, but I just don't get that Calvinism part." My entire apologetic is reformed. I don't understand how. I've never gotten that. I'll never understand that. I mean, the confidence that I have in going down to South Africa, going into the mosque in London, is that I have the truth of God, and God's going to honor that truth, and that truth is either going to be used by him to the salvation of his people, or it's going to be called foolishness, or I guess there is the middle ground. God will use it to be tilling the ground and to be working toward his eventual salvation of his people. But it's going to have a response, and it's not up to me to somehow try to help it out. I just got to try to stay out of the way. Don't be a jerk. Speak it in love. That takes such a tremendous pressure off of you. You can just love what you're doing. Make the proclamation. Love the people you're proclaiming it to. You don't have to try to trick them. And you don't have to embrace the wisdom of the world. God's grace is enough. God's Spirit is enough. That's in the wisdom of God. The world, through its wisdom, did not come to know God. Do you believe that? I submit to you that certain apologetic methodologies do not believe that. If you don't believe God has spoken His word, you'll never believe Reformed theology. If you do not hold the highest view of Scripture, you will never believe Reformed theology. Once you have the highest view of Scripture, you have Reformed theology, and you have the confidence to proclaim that truth and trust that God will make it to come alive in the hearts and minds of His people